Hello, how are you? This is the Georgia Doty Comprehensive Health Report, and we have our guest here tonight with us from Oasis Hospice and Palliative Care. We have Mr. Hakeem and Miss Sade, that's going to be here with us tonight. This is November 20th, and they are going to talk with us about the program that they have. It's located at 117th and Western Avenue, and they're going to explain to us how their program works. In the absence of our regular host tonight, Ms. Yolanda Gibbons, I am here. My name is Beverly Walker. I want to give a shout out to Mr. Don Doty, who is here with us in the phone room tonight. Okay, the Oasis Hospice and Palliative Care was established in 2014. They were founded as a faith-based hospice program where they provide services to the chronically ill patients of Cook County, DuPage, and Will County as well. It indicates here that they exist to be a sanctuary and a refuge to patients and their families by providing quality for life services for patients who are dealing with life-limiting illnesses. What I'm going to do is to turn it over to Miss Sade and have her talk about some of the services that they provide at their program.
Thank you, Beverly. Hospice really is a program that's geared towards terminally ill people. And when we think about terminally ill people, we're talking about people who have been given a life expectancy of 6 months or less if the disease runs its normal course without any aggressive treatment. And so we're looking really at when the doctors have said, you know, we've done all that we know to do, and there's really nothing else that we can do. So our focus is on comfort care and not curing the disease. And to that extent, we not only take care of the patient as an individual, but it's a holistic approach where the whole family is included in our plan of care.
Okay. Well, so when they say hospice and palliative care, do most people actually understand what you mean?
No, unfortunately not. I think that there's a big lack of education about what hospice is, because most people generally think it means giving up hope, it means death, it means a place where you just go to die when you've given up. And the reality of it is that that's not what it's about. Hospice is about quality of life. But I want to start with palliative care, because palliative care just means comfort. Comfort care, that's all it means. So if I were to describe it, I'll describe palliative care as an umbrella. Okay, and then hospice care would be one of the branches under that umbrella. Okay. And so palliative care is more focused at any stage of the disease process. So you could have palliative care while you're seeking aggressive treatment. You could have palliative care at the beginning of the illness all the way through to the end, because palliative care simply means comfort care and managing the symptom. So for example, for a cancer patient that's going through chemotherapy and probably maybe they're nauseous as a result of the chemo, palliative care would treat the symptoms, which is the nausea that they're going through, but they would still be able to have their chemo. So that's palliative care, just making people comfortable. Hospice, on the other hand, deals with terminal illness. And so for someone to elect hospice, they're foregoing aggressive treatment most times. Because at that point, when the disease becomes terminal, it's been said that the disease is no longer responding to curative treatment. And so it's a futile medical intervention to pursue aggressive or curative treatment. So we focus more on comfort. And so hospice typically comes in when 2 physicians have certified that this person has a life expectancy of 6 months or less. And that's why I think there is a misconception about hospice being a place for dying, whereas the reality is that people live longer when they elect hospice than when they're not on hospice. People have better quality of life, and hospice doesn't mean that you have to die in 6 months. We've had patients on our program for 3 years that have, been recertified under the program, and they continue to enjoy good quality of life.
Okay. So that makes more sense now. Okay. So I know in hospitals also they have they use the word palliative care a lot as well. Okay, so I guess it's more understandable now.
Yes.
Okay. So what type of a team do you have? If I have a person that's ill and I call you and say, what are some of the services that you can provide? Do you have a team approach, or do you have one person that would do the evaluation? How do you do that?
Excellent question. Overall, hospice is an interdisciplinary team approach to caring for the individual. And so we have psychosocial intervention, we have clinical intervention as well. And in our program, for example, we're led by our medical director, who's a physician that's certified in hospice and palliative medicine. Under the direction of the medical director, we have registered nurses who are also case managers. And that would be the point person in most instances for the family. She would be the go-to person. She would be the coordinator of the care. She manages the case. Under the registered nurse, we would have a hospice aide. The hospice aide goes in to provide treatment for activities of daily living, bathing, showering, if that's what's needed, shampooing, getting them ready for the day, pretty much assistance with feeding. That's what they do. And then we also have spiritual support. Our spiritual support is not of a particular faith or religion, but we meet the individual where they're at. So they direct it. And we have volunteers. Hospice was started in England as a mainly volunteer organization. And so, in fact, it's one of the mandates in Medicare that you have to have volunteers that provide services to your patients. They don't have to provide hands-on. They could be administrative volunteers helping in the office, or some people would provide companionship as well. We have a music therapist in our program who uses music as a therapeutic intervention to manage symptoms such as pain, shortness of breath, and things like that. We also have social workers, and they are phenomenal in the hospice spectrum because they liaise with the family and help them with a lot of resources. Traditionally, we don't like to talk about death, and so they're able to help do the end-of-life planning. How do you want this to look like for you? And have those conversations with our families. I traditionally tell families that death doesn't happen between the hours of 9 and 5. Most times it does happen at 3 a.m. in the morning. And if that does happen and you don't have a funeral plan in place, it's a lot more expensive than when you've planned ahead and you just have to call, the whoever you're planned with. So that's one of the things that the social worker helps with as well.
Yeah, it would take a lot of stress off as well, having that conversation ahead of time.
Definitely.
Because then you wouldn't have to be running around, as we say, like a chicken with your head cut off.
Absolutely.
Not really knowing exactly what to do. And if it's younger people who've never had to do that, it can be very, very stressful as well.
It is. It is.
Okay, so you do have a team approach, so that makes a lot of sense as well. So I got some questions here. I'm gonna go through. So how is hospice paid for? Is that if a person is in the hospital and they need hospice care, do they have to pay additional money along with their insurance, or does the insurance take care of that, or do they have to worry about having more money to pay?
There's a two-pronged approach to answering that question. And the first prong is if the individual has Medicare or Medicaid insurance, that covers 100% of hospice care. Okay. So they don't have any deductibles, they don't have any co-pays, they don't have any out-of-pockets. But if the individual has private insurance and they have a co-pay or a deductible as part of their plan, then they would need to still meet that because the insurance. So it's really based on that. Okay. But most people that do qualify for hospice, they would be able to get it at 100% paid for by Medicare or Medicaid. And most insurance plans do that as well.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And
So
that also covers, like the equipment, like the drugs they may need as well.
okay.
Yeah, so they don't have to pay for any of, those services.
A whole lot of stuff out of pocket.
Yes.
Right. As
So
long
they
as
would
it's
already
related.
know up front what the insurance would entail if they had to have those services.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We explain all that.
Right. We would explain it to them. We've called your insurance. We've verified it. Your deductible is $200. You've met $150. So you would still need to meet a $50 deductible for this program. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So that makes a lot of sense. Okay. So let me ask you: if a patient needs hospice care, and they go into hospice care and they appear to be giving up because they think that they're going to die, what do you do for them then?
Excellent question again. Right. And so one of the things that we do at our program, our nurses visit our patients at least twice a week. That's our minimum number, unless they specify otherwise.
Okay.
Our aides visit at least 3 times a week. So on a good week, you might have, even if the nurse and the aide overlap once, you will have 4 days where you're getting contact from the hospice team member. And so what we do is the aide would report to the nurse any changes, the chaplain would report to the nurse any changes, the social worker, any team member would report to the nurse case manager any changes that they see in the patient. And so what we try to do is by having a plethora of people from different disciplines addressing the issue, it brings it to light. And we're able to most times address it in a non-pharmacological way, which means without medication. So sometimes, the music therapist might go there and there's someone that have enjoyed music, or maybe they used to sing in a choir or a band, and just having that improves their mood. However, if pharmacological intervention is needed, then we're able to start the person on that as well. And, I'd like to point out at this time, talking about pharmacological intervention, with most hospices, and as definitely I can allude to, we always start with the lowest dose of a medication. We're not, because I know that's one of the misconceptions about hospice, that they're just going to dope you up and leave you there. What we do is we start at the lowest dose that's necessary, that's needed.
Okay, I see we have a caller.
Okay.
Caller, are you there?
I'd like to ask, is there an age limit to receiving hospice care?
I'm sorry, you got to speak up.
Is there an age limit in receiving hospice care?
Is there an age limit to receiving hospice care?
No, hospice goes from pediatric to geriatric. The only requirement is that somebody does have a terminal illness. However, not every hospice program will provide care to the spectrum from pediatric to geriatric. In our agency, for example, we deal with adult population only, which means 21 and over. There are other hospices that will take a pediatric population.
Oh, okay. So a lot of people specialize in working with adults and not children.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, well, that makes sense.
Yes, but it is available to everybody.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, another question here, it says, well, that was a question, who is eligible for hospice care? So what if a person, and I know you mentioned the 6 months, and a lot of times people may live longer than 6 months. So if a person is in hospice for the 6 months and then they begin to improve, And I've known people who have been very, very ill, and their family was planning a funeral for them, and they get better. And then they go home. As a matter of fact, I know a person who they was planning a funeral, and they working good now. I mean, been working for like 10 plus years. So what happens then?
You discharge them from the program. Because remember the
Sounds like a miracle.
right, and we do
is in a way a
we
miracle.
witness miracles every day, don't we?
Yeah.
Yes.
I see we have another call. Caller, are you there?
Yes, I am.
What's your question or comment?
I'd like to know if spirituality can overcome certain health issues and diseases that some may have deemed as a death sentence.
Well, I think that's probably what we're talking about right now. His comment was, the question was, can spirituality overcome what has been deemed as a death sentence? And so what they just said was that a lot of times if a person has been in hospice for 6 months and they get better, then they go home and live their normal life.
Right.
I guess if they need therapy to become physically mobile again, they get the therapy and then go home and live comfortable. I mean, or do whatever it is that they do. So how do you deal with that?
I mean, spirituality is very important in any aspect
Right.
to an individual, and I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about something that drives you to be better, right, every day, to be your best self. And so for a lot of people that are spiritual, it gives hope. It gives you something to look forward to. It gives you an outlet. It gives you purpose. And so when you believe that you have purpose, then you will act and you will walk in that. And so, and sometimes, a terminal illness is, I always tell families, it's notice, but it doesn't mean that it's the end. We have control over the quality of our life, but we don't have control over the quantity of our days.
Right.
That's been established. And so we can do things to try to have, when I exercise, that's because I want to have better quality of life. And that means, my heart pumps the right way, I'm able to run up and down the stairs and be physically fit to play with my children, my grandchildren, and stuff like that. So that really is what exercise does to us. It improves our quality of life.
Okay.
Spirituality is the same thing. So spirituality is giving you purpose and a meaning, right?
Okay, can you talk a little bit about the music therapy? I know you mentioned that before. Can you talk a little bit about how that goes when you do the music therapy? What would the process be for music therapy for a person?
So I'll start off a little bit and then Hakeem can round up.
Okay.
What we do in our program is we have a music therapist and she's board certified in music therapy. And so one of the goals of music therapy is to manage symptoms. However, the other side effect of that is entertainment, but that's not the primary purpose.
Okay.
And so I have witnessed where the music therapist will, if someone is, for example, agitated, and they might start playing their music fast, and they use a lot of instruments, maracas, tambourines, drums, guitars, all kinds of instruments that they would use. And so they might start at a fast pace. If I started playing music now, if I played the slow music, your breathing would regulate.
Right.
It's just a fact of life. Right. And so that's one of the things that we use. And it's been proven that hearing is one of the last things to go. So even if someone is not able to respond to you cognitively, they can still hear you. And so they hear that music. And so she might start with a really fast beat. If I'm agitated and I'm all over the place and, she does it, and you realize that as she gains control and starts to slow that beat down, that agitated person also responds in the same way. So I really believe in music therapy. I think it's one of the blessings that we've been blessed with as a non-pharmacological intervention to managing symptoms. And, Hakeem has been out and about. He goes out and about with our music therapist. So you might want to say a little bit more.
I've seen just, practical how this can really change people. Most of our patients, some of them you'll be surprised, they love rock and roll. They love, R&B. And, our music therapist can play different genres of music to stimulate their senses, and we've seen how that is really effective. So
in improving quality of life.
Definitely we use that a lot.
In our program.
Okay, I remember I had quite a bit of surgery on my hip, and for some reason and I was hospitalized for 6 months, but for some reason every day at the same time I wanted to hear music, and it just made me feel better.
Yes.
And my mother would come to the hospital and she would bring music to me all the time, and she'd say, "I got your music," and it made me feel better, and I had helped me change my mood as well.
Yeah, definitely. It does wonders for the soul.
Yeah.
So.
And I have actually seen, witnessed where, people with advanced stages of Alzheimer's, where, they're nonverbal, they're non-responsive, but through the use of music, they come out of their shell and they'll start to sing. It's amazing. Yes, it is amazing. Yes.
So we've talked about quite a bit, and we are getting to the end, and we really need to do a wrap up. So if I ask you, what would you want to say to the audience, our listening, that are listening to us tonight? What would you want to say to them in terms of hospice and palliative care, in terms of health services? What would you say to them?
I would like to say hospice is a very underutilized spectrum of healthcare, because people have a very, very bad notion about it, that it means giving up hope, but it's really not that. It's choosing how you live. And also, I would like to let them know that hospice is provided anywhere an individual calls home. It doesn't have to be in a hospital setting. It can be in a private home, it can be in an assisted living facility, it can be in a skilled nursing facility. And I really would also like to say hospice is not giving up.
Okay.
It's not. It's improving your quality of life. And, like Hakeem said earlier on, we have discharge people from our program because they got better, and you've been a witness. You're a living witness to that as well. So it's not all about dying. I always, when I meet with families, they have this look on their face. It's about it's about the dreaded H word. Right. It's like, yes. And by the time I explain the services, and Hakeem explains it well. It says, if I tell you I'm coming into your home, a nurse twice a week, an aide, a social worker, a chaplain, a volunteer, music therapist, would you accept all this? Oh yeah, that would be very helpful. Right. But if I tell you it's associated with the H program, and all of a sudden I want to hear about that.
Yeah.
And my roundup would be also that when I've talked to families, for those people that have utilized hospice services, they speak glowingly about it. Okay. Most of the people that have a negative connotation is from what they've heard, not from personal experience.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, hospice is an awesome, not because, we're part of hospice, but I think people wait till the last minute to utilize the services. Like I said, we have a patient right now that has been on for 2 years. They gave him 2 weeks. They told him to go. Yeah, they told him to go say his buys and plan funeral arrangements, and he's still with us right now. So sometimes it's the care, the comfort, the love you get. Yeah, that's what changes things, not necessarily all the medication you're on. So.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. So I do want to say thank you. I want to thank you all on behalf of the Georgia Doty Comprehensive Health for coming on, sharing this information. I mean, it's really given me a different view about hospice. I do want to share the information about our program that we have coming up. next week, actually, after Thanksgiving. It's November the 28th, and it's in reference to our breast cancer forum that we're having. Let me see if I can, oh, boy, okay. It's not working out here. But it's the Breast and Prostate Cancer Forum. It's going to be at the Charles Hayes Center, 4859 South Wabash on November the 28th, and it's from 9 to 3 p.m. We have Dr. Terry Mason that's going to be speaking. Brula Brent, who is the CEO of Sisters Working It Out. We have some music, which could be called music therapy, that's going to be shared there. And I can't see the rest of it. Breakfast and lunch will be served. We're going to have some, it's going to be some education, and they'll be able to take advantage. And you guys are going to have a booth there, right?
Definitely, yes.
Good,
Oasis
good. So
Hospice
you'll be able to
will there.
share that information as well.
Okay.
So I do want to say thank you very much, and that ends our program for tonight.